present educators or psychologists, or whatever you want to call them, say that shame and guilt are part of humanity's biology. And I say that it's not true. It's part of our culture. It's not part of being human.
Yeah.
Okay? That's where we are. That's what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Welcome to the Inner Sanctum online group sessions with Karen Swain. This recording is some highlights from our 2 to 3 hour online sessions where I teach deliberate creation each week, and once and sometimes twice a month we invite a guest teacher to share their wisdom and their work. And we can quiz them and we have a lovely time. Enjoy the highlights, and if you'd like to join us, please go to karenswain.com/innersanctum and sign up. Hello and welcome to the Inner Sanctum with our very special guest teacher, Lois Hollis. Hello, Lois. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. To such a sophisticated, important group.
I know.
Need it.
Our tribe are wonderful, beautiful, wonderful light workers and New World teachers, and fabulous tribes of people all over the world. Let me just introduce people to Lois who haven't met Lois before. I had Lois on the show, is it once or twice this year? Once last year.
Twice already, yeah, twice. We just couldn't stop talking.
Once last year, once this year. But Lois Hollis experienced several spiritual encounters, which began with a near-death experience in childhood. Depression, anxiety, and 30 years of migraine headaches was Lois's way of life until she asked the perfect question: what do you do about shame? Stunned, she silently went on a mission to learn more, and her life changed dramatically forever. She discovered that shame and guilt was within everything she felt. The good news was that the solution to her many emotional and physical problems was in confronting the shame and guilt. And as she did, she healed her anger, depression, migraines, rage, fear, and pain. Lois comes to us with lifelong background in health. She began as a nurse's aide at the age of 12, and continues helping people today. This says 76, but I think you're 77 now, Lois, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm 77 now.
77 and getting younger.
Of course, why not?
She shares her 15 years experience as a shame, guilt educator, counsellor and filmmaker to give us an effective and lasting way to health, wellness and spiritual maturity. She's the author of 3 books and a video on Soul Speaks, the original process that connects us with our inner personalities to heal physical and emotional traumas. Her newest book is Now is the Time. It contains her light language readings that help us spiritually develop by dissolving resistant mental, emotional patterns. Are you still producing the film I'm Good?
I've just produced it, and it's in editing, and it will be released in May. And it's called I'm Good.
I'm Good. And that
good.
And that's the film that illustrates how shame and guilt affect us physically, mentally, emotionally.
It physically shows, it illustrates shame as an energy and how it affects us. So I'm bringing it from the invisible to the visible.
Right.
Why not?
And you can find out more on Lois's website, which is loishollis.com. So we've been chatting for because the clocks have changed in the US, so people were jumping on early. Anyway, Lois and I have been online already for at least half an hour chatting away about all sorts of things. Where do we start? Maybe just start with your story. You were in your 50s when you discovered this, and how did it happen that you discovered it?
Well, probably in my 50s. I was extremely active in my life. I just had this ability to just do even the face of adversity of migraines and so forth and raising kids. And somehow it just kept on moving. Now I realized that God's spirit was really moving me because my physical body was so tortured with abusive traumas from childhood. And migraine headaches, as anybody had them, they're very debilitating, but somehow it just kept on moving. Somewhere in my 50s, my health just totally disintegrated because, as you know, if you don't fix it, it gets worse, right? So, I was dying. I had, 2 or 3 years left, they said, and that kind of made sense because my leaky valve was really leaking and my traumas in my brain were really not working and my liver was destroyed because of 30 years of meds. I mean, so yeah, that makes sense. And I was very suicidal because I was very depressed. I went to therapies and I didn't want to commit suicide anymore. So I was like, that was good, but I wasn't happy and still very ill. Luckily, I found a healer, chiropractor, and were able to heal lots of my problems, but emotional problems. So I was in a women's group one day and they said, what do you do about shame? And I said, that's an odd word. Haha. Totally filled with shame. You got to know the irony of this. I'm going, that's odd. And that shows you that we're so full, not we, but we have shame guilt in us, but we don't see it because the culture doesn't allow us to know that it exists. So I went, that's a very interesting word. So I went to the library and did sorts of research and all. And the only thing I could find was Bradshaw's work, which was The Sickness of the Soul. Anyway, so because of my ability to talk with the universe, I was receiving information that was not written, and it made sense to me. And I had clients at that time, and we would work on different parts of their personality and the shame, guilt. And through that mastery, it came to me that shame guilt was the only problem I had. Of course, I had all the other problems, but the root of it all was shame guilt. And it was like, I was so excited because I didn't have to do all these extra little things for anxiety and depression and health. And so I just had to get rid of shame guilt energy. And then that's when I realized it's an energy. It's like a computer virus that comes into your computer and makes everything not work properly. Shame guilt is a negative energy placed upon humanity. That's a whole nother story. Placed on humanity that causes us to devolve. It changes our positive emotions into negative ones. Compassion into depression, passion into anger, intuition into anxiety, etc. Then, as you well know, I'm talking to a very astute audience, the meridians inside of us and the energy flow gets distorted because the energy coming in is distortive. So our liver doesn't work as well, and our brain doesn't work as well, our mind doesn't work as well. So it distorts everything within us. It also covers our ability to connect with spirit.
Absolutely.
Because it's just distorted energy. So I was like so excited. The whole world needs to hear this. Well, no, they didn't want to hear this because nobody talks about shame and guilt. Shh. So anyway, so now it's becoming more of a situation than I can express. And I'm really appalled that shame guilt isn't its own study, because it's in everything we do.
It is.
Every process of our being. But to this audience, it's really more important because we are the light bearers. We are the light bearers for the universe. So we need to be aware of what is shame guilt, what is the behaviors, so we don't have it or release it, avoid it, so we can have more light energy for the universe to survive.
Mm. You know, as I'm listening to you, Lois, I'm thinking about aging and just listening to your story about your, about how your body was
debilitated.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, probably one of the biggest reasons that we age, or not age so much as get wrinkly, but decline with age, is because we don't address what you're talking about. We don't clean
exactly.
up.
I have pictures. I don't know if I send them to you because people are like, I don't believe you. So I got to show them pictures of myself at 50 as a crippled old woman. And I didn't have plastic surgery or anything like that because I'm like so sensitive. I can't even take an aspirin or anything like that. So, if God doesn't fix it, forget it. So I got rid of my gray hair. Okay, I still have gray hair, but like seriously, I mean, I was totally gray and crippled. And with each release of shame guilt that I found what's inside of me, it changed. And then people started, when I was in Sedona, that's how I started my practice. People came to me and he says, Lois, what are you doing? You're walking straighter and you look younger. I want to do this. And I said, they say, what are you doing? I says, I'm talking to myself and kicking shame out. They go, okay, let me do that. And I says, okay. So I taught them what I do, and they too experience a big shift. Now, the longer they did it, the more progress they made, of course, like that. So then they sent their grandmothers and their kids and their husbands and so forth. And that's how my practice grew. And then I knew that I was onto something that was significant. And then someone said, you should charge for this. I said, charge for what? I'm just talking to people. So that's really how all this began in Sedona. Mm-hmm. And then the more I spoke with people and the more their lives changed dramatically, I knew that this was important. And then I started writing from Spirit, and Spirit was telling more and more about the work that I needed to do. And 100% of all marketers said, Lois, you will never succeed if you call yourself a shame guilt educator, because no one wants to hear those words. You can say a happiness educator, a joyful educator. And I said, no, that's who I am. And someone has to say it.
It's almost as if we're ashamed to talk about shame.
Exactly. Of course. Perfect.
Yeah. I've recognized it as unworthiness, which is the same energy when you think about it. The I'm not good enough story or the I'm unworthy story, I recognized it in myself as I was trying to heal abundance issues, like, do I not let myself receive money because I feel unworthy of it, or I'm not unworthy? And it's the same when you think about it. It's the same energy. It's like, there's a shame there. There's like, shh, don't talk about money. Don't tell people how much you earn. There's like, shh. It is the most pervasive energy. It is so pervasive. Go on.
And it's the most quieted energy, like in the psychology. Okay, I'm a nurse, and so, I've dabbled in all of these things. And there is, I think, 400 conditions that you can bill for. And none of them was shame guilt. And like, what is not the most important thing here?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, what I really wanted to speak to was what we spoke with in the beginning, that how important we are as humans. Is that okay? Like what we were talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Earth is precious to the universe, and within it holds the keys to sustainable life. You see, The human is a microcosm of universal life. All species come together within the human. The human has been the crowning creation of the universe, and within those codes lies the universe's fate. The desolation of the human is the prime concern to the world, and it has nearly completed its mission. We here will not let this happen again. We will and can stop it and strip of its power. There is no loving within the journey of shame and guilt. The curtain of darkness is to be no longer. Take action where you can. And that's what they tell me, take action when you can, and we will be there with you. That shame, guilt is really the only obstacle to human evolution.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are here, all of us are here to kick it in the butt, as you say. As you said.
We have to, but we have to. How do you defeat your enemy? You learn about your enemy so you can defeat it. So that's why I call myself an educator first, because people don't even know they need it.
Yeah. You know, recently I reached out to you this year to have a session because I identified that I was still carrying stuff that it's so insidious and pervasive that even when you've done years and years of personal growth or spiritual work, it's still there. And it's like people call it fear, but it's like we're marinating in it. We're marinating in it. And it's like the fish can't see the water because it's swimming in the water. It's the same with
Perfect. Yeah. That's exactly it.
And so it is a constant expansion of awareness to actually identify with it. And I think that whenever you get upset about anything, there it is, you know, like that's you're still holding on to some distortion within you if you're getting upset about it. And also, as like you've identified us all as the light bearers, you know, I had Michael Tamora in the Inner Sanctum last month, and he identified that everyone in this group, it's probably everyone in the world really, but is carrying some burdens that aren't your own. So as light weavers and healers and people that want to make a difference in other people's lives, we tend to take on the energy of others as almost as if, let me carry that burden for you. And so we can carry this shame, guilt burdens that as other people's, either our families or people close to us or people at work or our partners, we can carry it. Have you identified?
And you know why? Because we have the capacity to do that, because we have so much light capacity. The more light capacity you have, the more shame, guilt you can take on. So it's natural for us to feel that way.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But that doesn't make it right.
And I know that when Michael said that to us last week, many of you went, oh my God. And some of you dealt with it. At least I know one of you who said that you dealt with it, that you were sort of carrying around a burden that wasn't your own and you let it go. Because Michael's last week just saying, well, just let it go. Just let it be and let it go. I'm like, that's easier said than done, Michael. Let it be and let it go.
You have to remember they're still humans also.
So you're treating them with respect, not shame and guilt. Do you see the difference? That's you're just a brilliant person, because that's how people get in trouble. They don't know they're talking shame, guilt behavior, because that's how we're taught. We are taught to shame each other. That's what we do. But we don't know that. So when you treat a person with respect, it kind of cancels out that energy, and they are learning respect without even you teaching them, which is the best way. That's really brilliant. I've been on a couple leadership podcast. And I said the best leader is the one that leads without shame, guilt behavior. So that's what you're doing.
Mm. Absolutely. So the best way not to take it on, even when you're working in a facility where you're marinating in it, like Tammy is just I've got to stop using that word just. I've got to take just out of my
just out of you. I know, me too. I'm working on it.
Is to respect everybody and see them all as souls, which is what we talk about a lot in this group. Tabashas, they're just God doing it their way, even if they're the murderer or the rapist. Or so to respect every soul as a soul that has come into density to experience, has come into this earth life to experience density. And
can I add something here? Even though you treat some with respect, that doesn't 100% mean that they will not throw at you the shame and guilt they're carrying. See, I was ready to say their shame. It isn't their shame. It's the shame. So when you see that, feel that, because you're sensitive enough to know that that doesn't feel right, you kind of like energetically just block it. And say to yourself, I do not accept that. And that will throw it back to them or the universe or wherever it has to go. But you have to consciously say, I don't accept that. And you can hear people in conversations that are arguing, they go, I don't accept that. But they say that unconsciously, but it's really the correct thing to say. I don't accept that. But consciously, if you know you're not accepting shame, guilt, it makes it even more emphatic to you and the universe and to shame, guilt, because shame, guilt only has one flaw. It dissolves in detection.
Say that again. Shame, guilt.
Guilt only has one flaw. It's like ice cream. It melts. It dissolves in detection. So the more you learn about what is shame, guilt behaviors, the more power you have when you say, that's shame, guilt. It dissolves in detection. That's that major imperfection it has. And that's the beauty. You can see it. Why has shame, guilt got hold of us? Because it hasn't been detected. Duh. I mean, it's so simple. It's funny.
Yeah.
It really is funny.
Yeah.
It's the biggest joke of humanity. Unfortunately to say that, but it is. The biggest joke that's been played upon us. So now we're getting like, that's why I'm making the movie. Because this sucker exists.
This sucker exists. So pervasive. I think in our community where shame, guilt lives is that, we're called crazy, we're called woo-woo, and we're kind of shamed for that. Like, you believe in all that woo-woo stuff. You must be an idiot. You must be crazy. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're one of those woo-woo ones. You believe in all that. There's all that is heaped on us.
And you say, thank you so much for the compliment. Thank you. Because people say, you're too sensitive. I go, thank you so much for the compliment, because I'll live longer than you. Yeah, and you don't accept it, and it goes, shame has no power. See, shame, guilt needs us because it's a parasitic energy. And you all understand about that. I don't explain that, but you all know that more than I do. Shame, guilt is a negative parasitic energy that feeds off of our light. We do not need it. It needs us.
Okay, so what do you think is the best way to kick it out, as you say?
What Tammy just said.
When you identify it in yourself, when you hit upon, not in regards to judging others, or respecting others. But when you hit upon it in yourself, when you're feeling low and you identify that you're feeling, ashamed or guilty or unworthy or not enough.
Okay. When you feel shame, guilt, not worthy or whatever you want to say, when you feel shame, guilt, you go, okay, I see you, get out of here. Okay, it's not going to leave, but it's, at least you're doing the focus, right? Getting it out. Now you say, oh, I just feel so unworthy. I don't know what to say, So you start writing down, like I did in the video that Tammy saw. Hi, unworthy. Thank you so much for seeing me. What do you have to tell me? We talk to ourselves. And sometimes it would be, I don't give a darn. Hi, I don't give a darn. What do you have to say to me? Thank you for coming to me. Thank you, inviting my emotions. I'm not talking shame, guilt. You're just an energy that disrupted my positive emotions. Get the heck out of here. I'm talking to, I don't care. I don't give a darn. I'm talking to my depression. I'm talking to my anxiety. And that's how you find the shame, guilt in your emotions. See, your energy goes in and it goes into your emotions. So you have to take it out of your emotions with their permission, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first step. The first step is what, Tammy and I were talking about, like, we don't take it on. I remember just, riding the car and go, oh, that person shamed me last week. Oh, I didn't even get it. Okay, now I can get rid of it. But it took me a whole week to realize I was shamed. Okay. That's typical.
Yeah.
So, it's better if you can just get rid of it right away. But we don't know that yet. We're not that smart because we've been, made it to be culturally acceptable. Present educators or psychologists, or whatever you want to call them, say that shame and guilt are part of humanity's biology. And I say that it's not true. It's part of our culture. It's not part of being human.
Yeah.
Okay? That's where we are. That's what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it has been part of being human. It has been the human experience.
But not part of our biology. It's not our physiology.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
But
it's part of our culture and is part of humanity, but it's not part of being human. I just heard a lecture that we had 72 DNA strands when God created us.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have 24. So do you ever hear the inner critic? Everybody, the inner critic. The inner critic in you is the church. The inner critic, everybody talks about, in psychology, they talk about subpersonalities, little kid, this anger part, this. And Karen, if you can remember our session, we did not do the inner critic. We just did a personality part. Okay. But now we're doing the inner critic. Ooh, the inner critic is in charge. You think you're in charge? No, the inner critic's in charge. So people say, oh, you got to shut them up. You got to get rid of them. No, you can't get rid of yourself. You just can't do it. You have to make friends with the inner critic. And that is possible, right, Tammy? In the video, you make friends with the inner critic. Not easy, but you can do it. So that's what we are. You identified your inner critic as the church. The church is running your life. And it's in conflict. You're in conflict. So we have to work with the inner critic. Now, the inner critic is scared. Why? Because they feel that they won't exist if they lose their job. Now, We know personally we can change jobs, but the inner critic is not that sophisticated yet. It's evolved. We have to help it evolve. And you exist if you change your job, right? But the inner critic feels like they'll disappear if they lose their job. And their job for you is to keep you in confusion so you stay in the church.
Is this helpful? Yeah. It's a huge subject. It's massive. And I think that, when anyone comes into a spiritual life or a spiritual journey, even if you've come from being an atheist, it's still very entangled with religion, whatever religion.
Everything is.
Like
even if you're agnostic.
Absolutely. So when you come into a spiritual life and you start saying, okay, I'm a soul, I'm more than my physical body, I'm a soul, I'm a spirit, it starts getting really messed up with all sorts of religious dogma, whether it's Hinduism, Buddhism, like everything. And there's just within all religion, there is this massive shame, guilt story, massive story.
Well, she's doing that. I'd like to tell us a quick story. I had a client that came to me. He was referred by a holistic physician in Sedona who was extremely anxious. He was in his 30s. He was on, various drugs and he had no reason to be anxious. I mean, like he was no health problems, no work problem, but he was extremely anxious and he was off the chart. So I worked with him for only 2 sessions and he did the same thing. He drew a line down the paper. His anxiety came from Ireland. What's Irish? Catholic. I mean, like you're 100% Catholic, right? Where did he move? To Sedona. Sedona's Buddha land. I mean, right? It's like Buddha and the red rocks and spirit talking to you, and it's not Catholic. And that's what was inside his unconscious mind. They were fighting. The Catholic was fighting with the Buddha. So he drew the same thing. He drew a line and he put his Catholic self called Henry and his Buddhist self was called, I don't know, let's say George. So Steve was his name, was the mediator between the Catholic and the Irish. And they decided what they'll keep and what they'll won't keep and what makes them happy. And the next session, he was fine. He had no more anxiety. Amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing.
It ties into a conversation that I think, Karen, you and I had, but I don't know if it was in the group too, about my body and it's his own entity. And now I'm taking this shame and guilt as an own entity. And it's a really cool thing to be able to, I'm not guilty. I'm not shameful. There's that is, and it's an entity.
Exactly.
It's so clear. It just provides clarity, I guess.
Yeah.
And once shame guilt is declared an entity, it dissolves because it has no power.
You know what I love about this work? It just ties in with everything that we've been discussing in the Inner Sanctum. There's a powerful law in the universe that says what you resist persists. And so many healers and light weavers and people see the bad and then resist it and like, no, get out, Satan, be gone. We're in this constant fight against the evil, either the evil cabal or the evil negative entities and what you're doing with this work, Lois, is you're not resisting anything. You're just accepting it as a part of you and talking to it. So when Michael said, let it be and let it go, You know, that was great advice, but a bit elusive. Like, how do you let something
How do you do that?
be? How do you let something
Yeah.
be and let it go? He's like, just let it go, let it go, let it go. But it is that acceptance. It's like letting something be is just pure acceptance rather than the no, I don't want this anymore. It's the acceptance that you've been in my life. You've been a part of my life. And now I'm going to let you be. I'm going to let you be. You've been there. Like, hello, you've been there. You've been my companion. So it's just such powerful work. It's something that most people don't understand because we're constantly in the fight against the what we don't want. I don't want the pain. I don't want this. I've got to fight it. I've got to fight it. I've got to fight it rather than letting it be. Yeah. So it's just perfect, Lois. It's perfect.
May I say one more?
Yes, please.
Yeah. If you feel to, before you sleep or when you go about your normal day, you need to speak with Mr. Church and call him by his name. And if you see him, look into his eyes and say, I see you. So say together, if you feel to, we claim our place on earth. We're inviting our inner critic, Mr. Church, excuse me, Mr. Church, yes, to become more human. The more human he becomes, the more evolved you become. The more your inner critic evolves, the more you evolve. You can't do it fighting him or her. You evolve together. So thank you, Mr. Church, for being willing to be my partner. And cross your hands over your heart, saying thank you. I love you too. We are partners.
But I would like to know how to let the energy go through me completely without having an effect, so that I may not have to feel the pain.
I would say that it is more appropriate not to let the energy in.
Okay.
Okay. And I have, on my website, I have an ebook called 500 Questions, One Answer. And I think that may help in identifying shame, guilt behavior so that it doesn't go into you. And you can, through the same process that we've been working with today, release what has been accepted. We all have accepted it because we don't know any better. And you sound very sensitive and sensitive to people. The bad news is that when shame guilt energy is directed at you, it goes straight in, like it doesn't have any barriers. The good news is that it comes out that quick. People that are very dense, it doesn't go in that deep, but it takes so long to get out. And people that are denser, it takes longer, like a couple sessions. So the good news is it comes out quickly. The bad news is it hurts. But the good news is that you're like, I don't want that. So as Karen would say, thank you, but we don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I feel like the best way to not let it in is to agree with what the person's saying. Like if you defend yourself, like Byron Katie says that the first act of war, defense is the first act of war. So if somebody says, you're a stupid idiot, you know, and they're trying to shame you, you go, yeah, I'm a stupid idiot sometimes.
No, you could say, that is very interesting. Because you don't want to admit you're stupid. So you can say, that's interesting, and then walk away. The soup's boiling, I got to run, the kid's crying, I'm hungry, I got to go to the bathroom. You just excuse yourself. Unless you just say, oh, that's interesting, and then walk away or change the topic. But the best sentence is, that's interesting.
That's interesting.
And then they don't know what to do with that because there's no fighting. And you're right.
There's no fighting. Yeah, that's interesting. Tell me more. What else would you like to tell me? But that non-resistance.
Okay. Yeah, that you would say that's interesting. Yeah.
I
you're
remember
right.
her story. She was actually working in a prison, and she came in to talk to the prisoners, and she had a heckler, and he was saying horrible things to her, and she said, "That's really interesting. Tell me more." And
Exactly.
he said, "You're so ugly. You're so effing ugly. I mean, what's with the gray hair and what's with the ugly clothes? I mean, you're so," and this guy was really giving it to her, right? And she walked up to him. She got off her chair and walked into the audience. She said, "That's really interesting. Tell me more. I would like to
Exactly.
know more about how I can improve how I look," right? And he's like, and he's giving it to her. And then she says to him, "You know, when you get out, you should work as a personal stylist. You seem to know a lot about how to style people." But it's just that non-resistance, that you just don't take it on or take it in if you don't fight it, right? If you
Exactly. Now, what is it? When does a tennis match end? When they stop hitting the ball, the tennis match. It keeps going if you keep hitting the ball. So that's what I say.
Right.
Shame guilt game is an endless tennis game.
Right.
If you don't return the ball, they don't have a game.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's how I tell people.
Perfect.
How do you stop a tennis game? You don't return the ball.
What's that say?
Thank you. Email me. Please let me know. Please.
Yeah.
It's LOIS
I'll pop it in the chat now.
3@gmail.
Can you just say it again one more time?
Lois3Hollis@gmail.com.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, email me because I don't know how to answer your question until you give me the response of confusion and Mr. Church and I'm sorry, I can't remember everybody, but everybody, you know. Just let me know what they say, and then I have an answer for them. Let me tell you.
Oh, Lois, this has been so cool. I just love you. We love you. I love you, Lois. You're just.
I love you too. I love everybody, and I love Stardust and everybody else, and Mr. Church. Mr. Church, thank you so much.
Yeah, Mr.
Thank you
Church
so
is
much.
cool.
He's so cool. Mr. Church is so cool.
Mr. Church, Miss Confusion, Miss Logic, Miss what else is there?
And Stardust loves them all.
Sensitivity, love the sensitivity. And thanks everyone
you.
for participating. Thank you again,
Yeah.
Kristen, for being brave enough
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
thanks
you
for
all.
putting me in the hot
in the hot seat. I put you in the hot seat.
I think everybody was in the hot seat on this one. You got them all.
You know, that
them all.
church shame and guilt, that's such a biggie in this world. Like, that's such
Yeah,
a
Mr.
biggie.
Church has a very big job helping the other churches out.
Right.
Maybe that's his job.
Big love to you all. Thank you again so much. Love you.
Bye. Bye, Flatty. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
you.
Love you all. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Lois.